Bronte who's formally got a lead role in that group. Right. So that's the culture leads there, working well.
Yeah.
Respect, admire, all that sort of stuff. Then you've got the young people's platform over here, getting bigger, kicking goals, 75 people of that thing. Even Rosie Marcotic thought it was good.
She did.
So growing in momentum. So who are the equivalents of the Brontes and the Sophies and Sophie and Monica and all that sort of stuff? So the youth platform, in terms of the analogy, who are the people who sit outside of the youth platform?
That would be OD and also the executives.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how leadership works for this group over here.
Yeah.
How's the youth platform different? Imagine if that was an actual question.
It is an actual question. I'm processing it, but it's true, isn't it? So it would be the whole.
I've got to come clean, I've got a bias here. I'm a bit of an anarchist, and so it will be very infrequent that I vote for a new hierarchy to control everyone else. And there's someone in particular who joked about creating an executive subcommittee of a committee to quote unquote tell people what to do.
I was at that meeting, I heard that. I know who you're talking about.
So, so there was a lot of first position about that.
I agree.
Whereas when I listen to the executive talk about that group, what they like about that group, I hear
inclusive work team. Yeah.
What else do you hear from the executive?
It's a hard thing. They feel completely connected to the group.
Because
they can relate to that group. Because they were young once. They were engineers. They were young once, so they have I think it's a head and heart connection to that group.
So we were talking about task stuff, social stuff, and emotional stuff. There's probably evidence of all of those things. The other thing that they talk about is sustainability. And what's really good about them is that they're so self-sufficient. Do you hear that?
Yeah. Sustainability.
Yeah. And there's almost something from the executive about, we really like how grown up this group is. You know, they're speaking in front of people. And they're very chuffed about the development of this group. Okay. So, you would agree that the executives see this group as quite successful? Being pretty outspoken about that. So, when the executive think of the success of that group and the value of that group, how much of that is about the fact that we can go to one person? Or that there's a leadership team who makes themselves available to the executive?
It's really interesting because like when I was talking to you about Sam Brown, what actually happens is you can have a team of people, and over a course of time, not about levels or anything like that, but sometimes a person can just behave and act as a leader within a team. They don't have the title, or they don't have the level. They just take on that role as a leader within that team. And I think that's what's happened with Sam. And people have just gone to her. I know that we said before, do I think she's a natural leader or something about her? I think there's an element where she's taken a form of leadership, but it's sort of a little bit behind the scenes, and then when the opportunity comes about in being in front of a group or a forum, she's quite happy for someone else to take the lead, but she's behind the scenes doing. Yeah.
So do we want to sponsor her because we like and admire her and advocate for her to take up a formal or informal leadership position in this group and make that decision on behalf of the group? When what we talked about before was about how inclusive it is, how good it makes connections. So we agree with all of that. However, of course, we like, and I like saying more than you like. I have a level of discomfort in nominating somebody and sponsoring somebody, and then trying to talk the group into accepting this person who we've put up as their new leader. That's buying into the assumption that we need a leader or a leadership group, or that the only way that this group can function is through meeting in a room at the same place, which is really only talking about people at 77 Grenfell Street. It doesn't help people in Narracourt. So just think about the group, what the group is. Is it a group unless it meets face to face, or is it a team? And then there's the stuff that we've talked about in terms of teams. And is the group or team the same thing as the projects that it does? Like this event, that event. Remembering that those two were priorities that we picked out of, I think there was 20 something. And the conversation went something like, well, we can't do all of this, so what are we going to take to the executive? So there was that initial meeting where the executive didn't really have a good sense of what this group was about. And I think at the time we said that the executive is a fairly tangible sort of group, so I want to touch, feel, taste, smell something. So in terms of examples of what we might want to achieve, there is this Bring Your Ideas thing where we make connections with the executive, for example. There's this other strategy over here where we involve the executive in panels, and it has something with the flavour of succession planning, for example. So the purpose of the group, the original purpose of the group and the workforce plan is about making connections between young people and the rest of TSD, including the executive. So that's a goal, that's an outcome that we're looking for. And these are a couple of strategies, okay? In here somewhere is a team which makes it all happen, or a group. So, to this point, I think we'd agree that they've been fairly successful. That's what you were saying before. Haven't got a formalised hierarchy, leadership group, leadership team, leader, those sorts of things. And yet it's been achieving all of these good outcomes. I'd suggest probably you have been the leader of this group.
I feel that I've probably facilitated.
Yep.
I think I've told you the midwife poem where the midwife poem, which is a true facilitator, it acts like a midwife, and the midwife just sort of guides the mother and the child. I've told you this before. It's great. I love it.
A poem.
It's a poem. So I've told you this before. It's fantastic. So the mother is giving birth to the child, and the midwife is basically there to just guide and make sure that the process happens. But at the end of the day, it's not the facilitator or the midwife that's done all the work, it's actually the mother and the child. And at the end of the birth, it's all about the mother and the child. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, my role with the Youth Communication Platform team is I haven't done the work. I literally have just purely facilitated a process and just kept the group. That's how I have actually interpreted my involvement with the group.
Okay, midwife. What if it's a breech birth? What if the deliverer of this baby needs to be induced? Because I reckon I can think of occasions where both you and I have stepped in when we thought that things had gone awry. I remember the very last meeting that we went to, there was someone who was trying to browbeat the other team, someone issuing orders, and I think he paused for a while to see whether or not the group would come back, and I saw, gratefully, saw you step in and almost remind the group of this unwritten set of rules built around inclusion, respect, things we're talking about before. So I think something about the midwife is also about risk management. It's having a sense of security. So, you know, yes, the midwife doesn't do all of the work, doesn't do the work unless something happens, which might call on the midwife to step in. So in terms of the maturity of this group, I mean, I haven't witnessed a meeting where I wasn't there and therefore couldn't witness it because I've got nothing, I don't have anything to compare. But as much as this group has grown, I think there's something of you as a midwife in that group which provides a sense of order, security, particularly when there might be one or two members who may otherwise have a tendency